So it has my customary brew squee, and even though this isn't actually a brew time, I'm going to have a brew anyway, just because why not? What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about specs first, and then we'll actually talk about my sort of commentary of the PlayStation, actually what was released and things like that, and we'll kind of do that sort of thing. The Verge is probably the best resource. I'll put a link in the description below of several links of places you can go to find out a bit more information about all sorts of stuff. But The Verge is definitely the place to go in terms of finding everything. Their resources seem to be a bit better than anywhere else, like Engine Gadget and Tech Radar, because their articles seem to be a bit shit. The Verge seems to be pretty good, and that's a surprise because I don't really like The Verge. So I'll list off description specs there, and then I'll actually do like a commentary of what was released and stuff like that. So we're getting a single chip custom processor with eight cores, which is going to be an x86 or x86 to 64-bit CPU. It's going to be the AMD Jaguar series CPU. And we're going to have a next-gen AMD Radeon graphics card or graphics engine within that, which will be running at 1.84 teraflops for those that are interested, which will be a bit more powerful than the current Radeon 7850, which is a medium level graphics card at the moment for PC gaming. 8 gigs of GDDR5 RAM, built-in hard drive, 6 times Blu-ray drive, 8 times DVD drive, USB 3.0, gigabit Ethernet, 802.11 BGN, of course, standard thing, Bluetooth 2.1, HDMI, analog AV out, optical SP diff, as you would expect on most things now, to be honest. Dualshock 4 controller, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the PlayStation 4 Eye camera, which will have two 1280 by 800 cameras with a fixed focal length of 2.0 for those of you that are very geeky. 85-degree field of view though, which is pretty sweet, and that's pretty much it. So we're also getting a new UI with the PlayStation 4. We're getting a new UI, and that's kind of it. No, I'll talk about that in a minute actually. So new DualShock 4 controller, which you can see up there, taken from Sony's Flickr page, so I just want to attribute that. Flickr page, as it says in the copyright just down there, it does say that it's copyrighted to Sony, but I'm using this for journalistic purposes, so it's fine. 6-axis sensor for movie shit, gyroscope, colour changing shiz for mood lighting and stuff. Apparently it's supposed to be for life, I suppose. If you have no lives, it'll go to red, I assume. For that sort of stuff. It's got a speaker inbuilt to it as well. It's got a touchpad at the top, and also the PlayStation 4 Eye can track the controller as well. We've got instant suspension mode, so there's a button on there, so you can instantly suspend your gameplay, put it in low power mode for instant resume, which is pretty cool. I quite like that. And a share button for instant streaming. And that's kind of that, really, I suppose. I'll actually do. So let's actually talk about the PlayStation 4. So, tech specs. Let's go back up to the specs. Right. Specs. So, what does this actually mean? Well, the actual processor itself, the CPU itself, Central Processing Unit, deals basically with physics. If you don't know much about gaming and computing and stuff, CPUs deal with physics, GPUs deal with what shit looks like. So, that's essentially the difference. So that AMD Jaguar CPU looks like it's going to be an SoC, a system on a chip. So there's going to be one chip, and it's going to have everything on it. Now that Jaguar CPU is pretty shit, to be honest, but it doesn't need to be great because it's only doing physics. It's not doing video rendering or anything fancy like that. So because it's only doing physics, they're just going to put like some shitty CPU in there. So, that AMD Jaguar was really only designed for tablets and low-end laptops and desktops, really. It's not designed for, your workstations. You're not going to be rendering 4K video through it or anything like that. That's not what it's designed for. It's not designed for like proper beastie work. The GPU, however, fucking sweet. It's an 8-core GPU, although I think it's got 18 logical cores, something of that nature. That actual AMD Radeon graphics chipset that's in there is a bit of a grey area because we're not really too sure what it is. All we know is it's slightly more powerful than the current 7850, which is a medium-range graphics card today. And actually, I think it's the exact same one I've got on my current desktop at the moment. And that runs things really sweet. Now, it will probably likely change. By the time the PlayStation 4 actually comes out, the specs will change. Now, it's interesting they're going with AMD on this one. It means it's brilliant, because that means for developers, that's fantastic, because they can easily port over stuff that's currently on the PC to the PlayStation, which is why Diablo 3 is coming to the PlayStation. How well, because console gamers probably won't be playing Diablo 3, it's not something the console gamer would necessarily play. And it also means that we can push things back towards the PC as well. So if you program, or you develop something for the PlayStation, it's likely to port straight over to PC pretty well. Especially, basing on AMD is pretty cool. And I suppose that's really in terms of like the specs. And we've not actually seen the PlayStation 4 itself. It's invisible at the moment. It doesn't exist. So, which suggests they've probably not actually nailed down a design for it. Which is standard, I suppose, really. It means it gives Sony a bit of leeway in terms of coming up with the final design, and perhaps they're waiting for Microsoft to step up and see what they're going to actually produce. So then they've got a bit of time to change things around and things like this. Something tells me that they're probably looking at getting this manufactured reasonably soon, because obviously the launch date for it is going to be roughly October to December time of this year, and well, leading into next year as well for Europe. So Europe has to wait for the PlayStation 4, which is a bit of a bugger, but I mean, to be honest, for me, I probably won't bother with it. Now, the other thing a lot of people were talking about is 4K. Now, is 4K going to come to PlayStation 4? Probably, because that's what Sony are really pushing at the moment. They're really pushing 4K stuff. They pushed out tons of 4K televisions and things like this and devices at CES. So it's likely that it will support 4K. They've got the specs set to support 4K, so there's nothing there that would say, that GPU in there is so beastly, you could quite easily support 4K in there with no problem at all. So it's likely that it probably will support 4K. Now, in terms of the actual stuff they showed, they showed at the press release, at the press conference, the gameplay on it looks fucking sweet. Now, I have heard also that actually the stuff they were demoing through it wasn't actually on a PlayStation 4. It was on a PlayStation 4 spec'd machine. So, by the looks of things, and what a lot of people have been reporting, is that actually they were running on a PC that had similar sorts of specs to a PlayStation 4. So it actually wasn't running on PlayStation 4, and it wasn't running the OS and stuff, which is interesting. So that it could be that the detail you see there will be slightly lower. But I don't know. It's unlikely, because obviously with the PC you've got a bit of an overhead with the OS there. I mean, not much, but a bit of overhead with the OS there. Whereas literally like a console is pretty much it's gaming, and that's all it does. What does it mean for the market? Because of course it's going to change the market, because I'm a PC gamer. I'm not going to be trying to be elitist, but to be honest, PC gaming is better in terms of graphics, in terms of community, maybe little bit, in terms of modding and things like this, and stuff of that nature. Now, with this upcoming PlayStation 4, what's going to happen is it will push the gaming industry up again, because what's limiting the gaming industry at the moment is the consoles. Because with PCs, you can quite easily, happily, push it beyond what currently the Xbox and PlayStation 3 can muster at the moment. And you've seen that with Crysis 3. I mean, the way they've done Crysis 3, that just looks orgasmic. And hopefully, the likes of Crysis 3 going over to PlayStation 4. I mean, not that Crysis 3 would necessarily go over to PlayStation 4, they might do, but that is the sort of level of graphics performance you're going to be getting from PlayStation 4. So current mid-range desktops at the moment. Now, a lot of people have been arguing that actually that's not the case, but actually I would agree. I would say no. If you look at the current mid-range desktops now, that's about the same sort of spec as what the PlayStation 4 is going to be. So one thing that will be very interesting is seeing how well it deals, or it intermingles with the Xbox, when the Xbox 3 or 720 comes out, and when the Steam box comes out. How well they go together, and how well they're going to compete with each other. Because essentially now it's Microsoft's turn to basically bring something out and bring something to the table and basically say, do you know what, Sony? Fuck you, we're going to need something epic amazing. It's not. I have to say though, with PlayStation 4, they're really putting the gamer at the centre of attention. They're not doing this bullshit family stuff anymore. It's not going to be in the front room. It's going to be gamers. It's for the likes that people that sit in their rooms and have a dedicated gaming setup. Likes of the people that will have Astros, types of people that will play Call of Duty and all these other shitty games that are like more kind of elite games as opposed to casual games. With the likes of the streaming service, so streaming dedicated inbuilt, which is pretty cool. You can render video on the fly as well, which is really good. And all these features are actually going to push gamers at the centre of the system, as opposed to previously when they've sort of dealt with a bit of both. They've dealt with a bit like the family side, and they've dealt with a bit of the gaming side. It looks like they're actually targeting the gaming, specifically gaming audiences, so the hardcore, the likes that will upload to YouTube, the likes that will share, they will stream games and stuff like this, which is quite cool. If you look at the industry where it's going, the majority of stuff in gaming is actually on mobile platforms now. So you look at the likes of my parents' generation and things like that. The way they game, they don't game on a console anymore. It's not about console gaming. It's not, in young children, they don't have consoles now. They're moving towards tablets and iPods and all these like mobile devices that previously would have been consoles, would have been a family console, whereas now, because they're pushing towards more gamer orientated, they want to capture that individual market and sort of go from there. Because I don't think, especially if you look at how much money Sony have lost. They've lost a ton. Crisis of 5.8 something billion they've lost. They've not actually made any money for a couple of years now on anything. The PlayStation Vita they lost money on. The PlayStation 3 they lost money on. So there's lots of they've got to capture up on. And actually, Sony are in the real shit at the moment in terms of finances. So it will be interesting to find out what sort of happens in terms of it competing with the rest of the market, seeing how well it will do in sales. I think it will do pretty well, but prices will be starting. We're not too sure about pricing yet. Pricing $400 to $500, about 300 quid. Probably likely to be higher than that. A lot of people were saying it might be higher. I don't know. That is going to be the key decision is whether it's how much it's going to cost, because I think that'll be the biggest decider for a lot of people. Is if it's going to cost 500 quid, probably not likely to go out and buy one. For 500 quid you could buy a PC with with similar sorts of specs really to the PlayStation 4, and if that's the case, you may as well just go and buy a PC, because you've also got a PC for doing PC shit on, and also got a PC for gaming on. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the rest of the market's going to do in terms of Xbox, Steambox, things like that, and go from there. But one good thing that I did see was that they're not going to DRM shit, so you can basically you can sell used games, and there's a good reason why they're not doing that. Probably because it's against EU law. Apart from that, I shall leave you to it, and I shall catch you in a later video.